Mission.
Hi there, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for watching my channel and following GunGuyTV. I'm very grateful that you do. I'm privileged to have Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association with me today in a kind of well, I guess you could call it an urgent conversation because as I understand it, we're wrapping up the legislative session and there are some bills that could be heading to the governor's desk. Governor Moonbeam Brown sorry, let me get that out of my mouth, might just sign them. You just never know what that guy's going to do. That's why they call him Moonbeam. So, Rick, thank you very much for being on the show. I'm going to kind of let you go here and tell us what's going on with the California legislature at the moment.
Well, thank you. There's some, I hate to say it, but there's the good, the bad, the ugly, to quote good old Colonel Oliver North. And so we're going to go through some of that good and that bad and the very ugly, and try to explain to your listeners some of the things that are going on that don't just impact the Second Amendment community, but they really impact the legislature and how we're being dealt with as Californians across many lines. And just, we have a unique picture of just how it impacts the Second Amendment. But believe me, these antics are being repeated over and over and over again throughout our legislature that is looking more and more like a dictatorship and less like a representative democracy. So that should tell you the tone of today's conversation. On the win side, so I'll start off with the good news and then we can finish off with the bad news and fight from there. But on the good side, we have told you on your show a couple times that we were fighting for Assembly Bill 2151, which was the youth hunt tag bill. And remarkably, against a very, very aggressive Senate a year ago and a very aggressive Assembly, we were able to get that bill through both houses, got concurrence, and it is at the governor's desk. So hopefully he will sign it. And as a refresher to all your listeners, what that bill is designed to do is we had outrageous hunt tag fees for youth, which is the next generation of hunters, that put them out of the game unless their parents were basically multimillionaires. And this has brought our youth hunt tag fees in long alignment with all the other from the Rocky Mountains West states. So those tags will drop to $20 from $300 to $400 a piece, which makes it easier for parents to go, you know what, I'm willing to do the lottery of $20 to try to see if my kid could go hunt an elk or a deer, and $400, well, wow, that could pay for a lot of other things. So this is a big win. It helps us to get a foothold with this new generation to bring them into our community that we wouldn't have had with otherwise. So that was a win. 2382 is now completely dead. This is a big win for all of us. We really led the campaign to support our gun owners and show that working collectively we could make a difference. And as you probably know with the work that you do outside of this, Joel, that had to do with the trigger groups, the 80% lowers and all that. And we were able to get that crushed. So that's a huge win, especially in this current season. And then another win we were able to get, it's a little bit more on the hunting side, but it was Assembly Bill 2697. And that was with Gallagher, who is an outstanding assemblyman who has been fighting and constantly along with Melendez. And a couple other people down in your area have been standing up and not just voting, but literally standing against the opposition and fighting for us. And Gallagher's bill was unique because there was a lot of fight on this one, and it was to allow landowners to maintain their non-irrigated cover crops on the land when it wasn't in use, which will allow for waterfowl and wildlife to go on those lands and for it to be hunted. So it was really a partnership between the hunting community, 2A community, and ag. And that is a partnership that you're going to see really focused on over the next few years, because ag is coming alongside of us trying to say, hey, we have similar interests and we're willing to boost your numbers and stand in the fight side by side with you on hunting and 2A matters. So that is a huge, not just short-term win in this season, but over the next few years. That's going to be big for us. So that's kind of the wins, which I wish there were more, but that's better than we've had in a couple of years past. And it's the first positive bill that the 2A community has got to the governor's desk in over a decade. So that's a good thing. Some setbacks that we have. So let's talk about Senate Bill 221. That's Anthony Weiner. And it passed the Assembly floor, and that is, sorry, Scott Wiener. And that passed
Is there
assembly.
a difference?
Yeah, no, they're both Wieners. But,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It did pass the assembly floor. It's going to be the end of the gun show, Crossroads of the West show in Daly City. And I want to take a little time because we've been talking about this on your program for a while. There is a concerted effort by the Giffords Group, the Brady Group, et cetera, to go after our gun shows. They're doing it in Southern California, as you know, down in your area at Del Mar, which I'll do a little shout out that on September 11th, we need as many people at 10 a.m. in the morning at the Del Mar Fairgrounds as we can get, because we are fighting to keep that gun show alive. And the more people we can get there, the better. And hopefully we can come back to that before the end of the show.
Sure.
But right now, this is a concerted effort. And, you know, a couple of things that I want to talk about in this bill. This is a famous gut and amend bill. So at the beginning, this bill was designed to support the LGBTQ community, which Scott Wiener says he's very much in love with, a part of, wants to help out. And it was to bring HIV prevention and education and awareness to help, you know, stop that deadly disease. And instead, he turned it into this "let's kill the gun show at the Cow Palace" bill. And I think as gun owners, we need to start calling them out, not just for going after us, but how dare you claim that you're against this disease, you're supporting these people, and you put that out to them that this is what you're doing, and then you get really quiet and you switch the game over to, now I'm going to go after this other group of people to try to score points with both when you're supporting neither.
Now, by the way, that is a fairly common practice in the legislature, isn't it? To write a bill in one form and then gut it and then change it into something else midstream?
Right, and no one's calling them on the carpet. And one of the things I'm encouraging gun owners to do is don't just call them on the carpet for doing a gun amend. Point out what they gutted and amended and how vital that was to California, and they just threw it in the trash to come after us. And wait, you know what was unique was we had Adam Gray standing up and saying things like, hey, when has a gun been used illegally from the gun show? We had Melendez give an incredible speech out there on the floor of, name me one. She said, just one time a firearm from that gun show has been used illegally. And the authors were like, well, there isn't one. So we're killing a gun show to make California safer because nothing's ever happened.
Well, as usual with the legislature, it's a solution in search of a problem. There is no problem.
Well, evidently they think they're Tom Cruise in that old movie, and they're trying to stop crime before it ever starts by arresting people before they ever do something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what they're going for.
Now, before you go any further on this, let me make sure, I want to get that out again. You need people there at the Del Mar Gun Show on September 11th for the gun show, or is there a rally? What exactly?
No, it's a rally. What is going on is they're going to make the decision there if the gun show will continue in Del Mar or if it won't.
Wow, right at that time.
That's what they're talking about. And what had happened was we had a great deal of the members under several other groups have been working alongside of us trying to get this to happen. And what has happened now is the anti-2A group has been in the media repeatedly about, you know, the dangers of gun shows down in San Diego. And some of those board members have either moved to the neutral position or have actually moved to the other side. And so it's a fair board meeting, which is who makes that decision of who's there with the contract at the fairgrounds. And so right now, this is the fight of our lives to save that gun show. And then later on, we'll be doing the same thing up here in Orange County.
So we need everybody that can possibly be there on September 11th at 10 a.m. at the Del Mar Gun Show, which is at the Del Mar Fairgrounds.
Correct. And the idea is to fill as many seats and deprive the opposition of those seats.
Okay. I'll keep talking about that, and I will check my schedule and see if I can be there. If I can, and I'm not teaching or something, I will be there. Very
well. Thank you. I'll be there. SB 1177, which is Portotino, also passed the Assembly floor. That limits the long gun purchase to one per month. So that means that if the governor signs it, you're going to be able to buy one firearm per month. This is detrimental on a couple of cases. You know, a lot of people look at that face value, I think, in the general public, even our community, and go, well, I don't need to buy more than one shotgun or one other type of long rifle, you know, than a month. But where it really hurts is what people don't think about is we have youth programs from JROTC to Scouts and stuff. Well, if you're putting on a program, sometimes the leader's got to go out and buy 4, 6, 22 rifles, 20 gauge shotguns, etc. Now you're telling them, well, no, you got to do that 8 months in advance to have enough firearms to run your program for 8 kids, because you'll no longer be able to buy them all at once.
Well, as a guy who owns a training company, I can tell you that's a very, very, very common dilemma.
2103, which is out of Gloria, is an interesting one that impacts you, I know personally, as well as a lot of other people, and I want to talk about this from 2 levels. This is the mandatory firearms training and handling to receive your CCW. And the concept is the legislature is trying to interfere with police officer standards of training. It's trying to involve itself in the direct duties of 58 law-abiding, duly elected sheriffs, which are the constitutional officers, as well as people like yourself, trainers, who have worked diligently with their local law enforcement community to say this is going to be the standard that we use to train people CCWs in our county. And a lot of the arguments I hear from the sheriffs, as you and I have talked before, is, you know, a sheriff up in Tehama County isn't looking at the same dynamics that the sheriff in Orange County is looking at, or San Diego, more urbanized environment. And so training obviously takes on that flavor based on the environment that are most likely to have to use that CCW for self-protection. The legislature is trying to come in now and say, you're all a bunch of idiots. We're so much more smarter, even though we don't carry anything. And we're going to say what the mandatory training is going to be throughout the state that everybody's going to have to go through. And it's completely unnecessary, because that training, if you look at by and large, is identical to what the deputies are required to go to off duty. And the idea is to make it so that you or I, as a law-abiding citizen with a concealed carry permit, have went through the same thing that the officers that's going to pull us over, so there's a comfortability with it. Now they're going to be messing with that and gerrymandering that. And I think this also allows the legislature a foothold to tell us what firearms training could look like, however they want to make it look like. So we're strongly against this. We're fighting it all the way to the governor's desk. We're trying to look at some legal issues on this. But this is not, you know, like a law of legislation. If you look at it at a glance, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. Yeah, it is. There's some really bad things.
Well, there's some other things, too, that you didn't mention about it, because I've been teaching the concealed carry courses for San Diego for a long time and for Orange County for a number of years before I stopped doing that. One of the problems you have is that we're not police officers. And so a police officer is required to have both arms that work. And you get a student who has an infirmity, one arm isn't as functional as the other, then you've got to alter the way that they qualify in order for that student to be able to qualify. It doesn't mean that they shoot any worse, that they don't shoot as well, or that they can't perform as well. It's that the course has to be modified because we're talking about law-abiding citizens. Here's the other issue. This is yet another instance, in my opinion, where it's a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. I would like somebody to tell me where in the state of California and when in the state of California a person with a license to carry a concealed weapon has A, committed a crime, or B, accidentally shot somebody because their training and their ability to use the weapon is so poor.
Right.
Can you find one? I can't.
Yeah.
I've looked. There isn't one for decades.
Yeah.
Right? So why is there a problem? There isn't a problem. There's no problem here that needs to be solved. By the way, each sheriff is an elected official who is a sheriff.
Right.
It's a person who has a lot of people working for this sheriff who carries guns all the time, and they have a training component. They generally have a training division, and that training division or training department determines what the training is that's required for concealed carry for that particular county. And you're right, each county is different, and the issues in those counties are different. So there's no one-size-fits-all that's going to work from county to county. It is a ridiculous premise. So I get the fact that it looks like it makes sense on the surface, but it doesn't make any sense at all. Take it from a guy who teaches the class all the time and has for a long, long, long time, and has carried a gun pretty much the majority of my adult life. So it's one of those things where if you don't know the industry, you don't understand what a mess that law really will cause.
Exactly, which is why we're opposing it. Still on the floor, we're waiting for a vote, and this next one I'm going to slow down a little bit on it because it chaps my hide, because I think a lot of people are missing the point, even people in our community. I've heard over the past couple of days with it. So this is Senate Bill 1100, again, out of Portofino. And one of the things that I think we need to really look at is, so this is the bill that says, you know, nobody gets a firearm until they're 21. You know, they just can't do it. But then you also have to look, there was another bill of his called Senate Bill 746. And that was basically required people moving to California to serialize and register homemade firearms within 60 days of arrival, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is both these bills proceed through the process, and 1100 is going the way of the dodo. It is dying. But 746 is actually looking like it's going to pass. And what the game that's getting played now that is just so reprehensible to me is people are looking at the governor's office going, so if 746 passes, will Moonbeam sign it? And they get, yeah, most likely. He kind of likes what it looks like. If 1100 passes, nope, he's not signing that one. So Portantino and company wait till the last day when any of our lobbyists, anybody could say anything, and they say, you know what I'm going to do? There's really not a law against it, so I'm going to merge them together. Because then the governor will sign it because it's got the 746 component he likes in it, and I'll get my 1100. So It's like a double win, which, you know, that's like me taking, you know, a Volvo and a VW, squishing together and go, oh, now we have a motorhome. You'd be like, no, Rick, there's a lot of steps that we missed that we have to go back and look at. That's what they're doing. And they're not just doing it in our community, they're doing it across the board. At the very end, shoving bills together just to get their crap passed because it wasn't going to get passed in the first place. And this kind of backroom negotiating that really removes the voice of the people. And so to me, this is an outcry, not just to our community, because 1100 is just simply a stupid bill that there's no proof behind, and they've yet to produce anything in any of the hearings. But now it's going to become a law because they're merging it together and people aren't calling them on the carpet. I mean, we're going to, but reality is we're going to sue on this, and it's going to be a 3 to 5 year process. And meanwhile, we're all going to suffer in the community for that first 3 to 5 years.
I'm half Italian, Rick, and as a result, I'm very seldom at a loss for words. But the idea that they can pull an underhanded, obviously what they know is completely unethical move like
Correct.
that, in order to stuff laws down the throats of people who obviously object to them, is beyond description. I can't come up with a word that isn't a swear word, and I don't swear, that doesn't describe it. I'm amazed that they can actually do that, and somehow that isn't illegal, or that isn't against the rules, if you will, of the legislature, if they have any. I'm astounded. I really am, because this 1100 thing, this is the nobody under 21 thing, right? Didn't we just have Molly Tibbetts murdered, who was 20 years old?
Correct.
Don't we have these young people murdered and brutalized all around the country all the time, and they're too young to be able to buy a firearm? I just did a whole video on carry a knife if you can't carry a gun, because you got to have something. I'm tired of these kids being hurt by criminals because we legislate them into defenselessness. And now this has a possibility. I was excited the other day when I heard it was dying. Now has a possibility of passing because of an underhanded trick that they can do in the legislature and get away with.
And my problem with it is it really is, like I said at the beginning of your show, it's a dictatorship move, not a representative democracy move.
Right.
And we've got to get people in our community to not just talk about, but to get pissed off and start calling these people up and go, what are you doing? And pushing and pounding the pavement, because they're not just doing it to us, they're doing it across. I've seen ag bills. I mean, I don't see everything, but I do see some of the things on the fringe sides of us that work with it. I've seen it being done in the ag and the healthcare industry. So it's not just our industry. And this is just this wanton attitude of, you know, I'm going to do it anyways. I don't care if you want and told me I can't. I'm going to do it anyways.
How long has this been going on? I mean, not that it surprises me, unfortunately, but how long have they been doing this?
3 years ago, getting up to this level. And this year, it's just been, they just don't even care. And they're not even applying the brakes. They're just doing it.
Unbelievable. Well, no, I'm sorry. It's very believable. It shouldn't be believable, but it is. Do you have any more, or is that bad news over?
1480,
No.
Senate Bill 1487. And this is another example of what I mean by this dictatorial attitude of our legislature. So, you know, there's local laws, you know, they're in like San Diego, and then there's state law. And then there's a thing that our state seems to forget called federal law.
Yeah, they forget that on a regular basis.
Right. And here's yet another example. So Stern comes up with this idea that, you know, I go to a Ducks Unlimited deal, I bid to support Ducks Unlimited in this example, and I get a trip to Africa. Yay, Rick. So I go to Africa, and I'm a cheap guy, so I shoot my one dick, and I go to bring it back. Well, now what this bill says is, nope, I can't bring it back. And
why?
Because that's just bad, because we as Californians don't believe in hunting in Africa anymore.
Oh, jeez, okay.
Okay? It's not even about ivory. It's about, and it takes nothing into consideration of that. Literally, the American dollar goes so far in Africa, it's not funny. I mean, multiple times over. It goes to local villages, local communities, local people. We're feeding people. I mean, there are so many benefits because that animal's going to die anyways because they have to cull those herds because the land will only support so many animals. So the animals that are set aside for hunting, we're going to die. But one way they just die in the wilderness, a tragic death. The other way, they die and the food and the monies and everything make life better for everybody, including the animals. But our state legislature says we don't care what federal law is. We're passing this, and this has two big impacts. Beyond the fact that this is going to create a state-federal set of lawsuits that's going to cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, is also it hurts the conservation efforts in Africa, and it drains our own, get this, our own vital resources, because this is what the solution was. We're not going to have local law enforcement do it. We're going to task the less than 400 game wardens to monitor all of our water and all of our state and say it is now your job to go monitor who's getting these hunts, who's coming back, and make sure they didn't bring anything back with them.
Well, there's a few issues with that. First of all, game wardens, in case you don't know, are, I think, among the lowest paid law enforcement in the state of California.
Right.
They are worked almost to death, and they are paid very, very poorly. It astounds me that anyone wants to be a game warden, and yet they do, and in many cases they do a phenomenal job. I'm proud of them, but to overtax them again, I guarantee you the extra work is not going to come with a pay raise.
No, it's not. And what this does essentially is, if you look at California in the background of the fires that are going on currently up and down the state, the drought, the nutria problem that we have, the game wardens are already stretched beyond belief. And I would say several steps past too thin. And to add this additional burden on is just going to put resources as well as people in harm's way over something that is a violation of federal law, which again goes back to that whole thing. This is not representative democracy in Sacramento. This is a dictatorship by a limited few that think they know what's best for everybody. And the law be damned.
I'm going to ask you this because that way I'm not preaching. I'll let you answer the question because I already know the answer. I've been a hunter since I was a kid.
Right.
There's actually a purpose in conservation for hunting. You alluded to the one purpose of hunting, which is wildlife management, and wildlife managers use hunting for that purpose. Can you describe to me why hunting is important, not only from a conservation perspective, but also a wildlife management perspective?
Be glad to. I talk about, this is actually one of the areas I'm very passionate about. People have to realize a couple of facts that I will give to your listeners. Fact number one. Every human being on the planet, all 7 point whatever billion of us, are the product of a hunter. Not one person walks the planet that is not the descendant of a hunter. That's just a fact. And we need to realize that, because that fact goes back to the idea that hunters are one component of nature. We're part of the apex predator thing right alongside grizzly bears and cougars and other big predators. Just as much as people love to tout that if you remove wolves from Yellowstone or the bears from Alaska, you upset the environment, when you remove hunters from that as an apex predator, you upset the natural order of things. And you can look to when the Khabib Plateau that's in Arizona, right next door to San Diego, you look back in the 1920s when they removed hunting, and what you ended up with was a population explosion of deer and then a mass die-off that almost led to their extinction. And it was because the area wasn't managed. Hunters are used to keep the numbers down of animals into what's called carrying capacity, of which the land can successfully sustain a normal, healthy herd. But what's also important is, and this is funny because I'm going to quote Moonbeam. Moonbeam said 3 years ago, in not one but 4 different bills, that Californians need to wake up and realize that hunters and fishermen collectively as sports people pay for over 95% of all conservation efforts in the state.
I want you to say that again, because I don't think people understand that. Go ahead. Say it one more time.
Hunters and fishermen, according to our own governor, Jerry Brown, make up 95% of all the conservation efforts and money in the state of California. And without them, we would be closing state parks within months that everybody gets to enjoy.
So where's that money come from? Where's the money come from?
That money comes from hunting licenses. It comes from sports fishing licenses. It comes from what's called Pittman-Robertson dollars, which is every time people go on buy ammunition, hunting gear, firearms, camouflage, etc. A portion of those funds go to the federal government and then are reproportioned based on numbers. And we have a big number. We're one of the largest recipients of that money. And it comes back in. And this could be a whole other show because I get really ticked off because our legislature routinely sends millions of dollars back to the general budget of the federal government instead of using it for, wait for it, range development, wait for it, conservation efforts in the state, wait for it, education, the very things that they gripe about when they're on the soapbox office and say, hey, I can't get people to get safe. Well, you got millions of dollars you keep sending back to the government that we, the people, put into the coffers for you. So wait, you don't want to use a program that I'm paying for to make people like me safer, to make you happy. That's what you're telling me when you do that.
This is one of the reasons I wanted you to talk about this, Rick, is you mentioned the fact that they're buying off portions of our community. I am going to say it this way. I am frankly sick and tired of hearing people say to me, well, I only care about defensive firearms. I only care about my AR and my pistol, or I only care about hunting. I don't care about ARs and pistols, or I only care about competitive shooting, or I only care about. Look, if that's you, I'm just going to tell you, if that's you, you need to wake up and smell the coffee. Okay. In fact, have the morning required pot of coffee and wake up and realize that this is one community with a whole lot of parts. We're one family with a whole lot of members who like different aspects of it. And the state of California, you just heard Rick say so, is actively trying to pick us apart. And if we don't start supporting one another and understanding the benefits that each one of us provide to society as a whole and to the shooting community as a whole, then guess what? We're not going to have a right anymore. We're not going to have a Second Amendment right anymore. We're not going to be able to hunt anymore. We're not going to be able to do any of those things. They're going to drive it out of the state. And then, you know how this happens. California either affects or infects the rest of the country. So we've got to fight this battle here. And we got to fight it together. Anyway, I'm putting my soapbox away now. No,
but an example of this was we just got done doing one of our 2 camps that we do to bring youth into the hunting community. And I had a 16-year-old girl participant who was going through because she wanted to know more about hunting but didn't think she wanted to hunt. Here was her quote: "My family uses firearms for defensive training purposes." And so she went through the hunter ed, and when it came time for the hunt on Sunday morning, I asked her, I said, why do you train so much? And she goes, well, because there would be an earthquake, civil unrest. She gave me all those things. I said, and at that point, the grocery stores don't work, and you need to know how to hunt. And she looked at me, and she's like, wow. And I said, and guess what? When those things happen, hunters need to know how to defend themselves. We're all the same. And she went on later that day, took her first pheasant, which I was very proud of her. But afterwards, her family and I had a really good discussion when they were picking her up from the camp. And the dad was like dumbfounded. He goes, I never thought about, hunters will have to defend themselves and we'll have to, we really are the same community. And I'm like, if people would get off their egotistical soapbox for a moment and realize it's all the same thing.
One of the biggest problems I think we face in California is apathy. Apathy of gun owners and so on. I got mine, so, I already have my guns. I don't need to buy any guns. I've got what I want. So the 1 gun a month thing doesn't bother me. I already have my concealed carry permit, and there's a lot of people in California that do. I mean, if you live in L.A., you don't think anybody does. I get it. But most of the counties issue. So, if you're except the big ones. So a lot of folks have concealed carry permits. Well, and they're, I've got mine. I don't need to worry about that law. That doesn't really affect me, or whatever the case might be. We've got to stop doing that. 1, we got to stop being apathetic, and 2, we've got to stop segmenting ourselves and letting there is that old saying, divide and conquer. And if the state is, if we allow them to do that to us, well, we're going to be conquered, and pretty soon the rights that we think we already have, like our CCW permit or the guns that we already have, we're going to start losing those, and it's going to be incremental. It's not going to happen overnight. So we got to wake up a little bit here.
Let me give you an example. I think they really test bedded some of what you're talking about in the hunting community. About 5 years ago, they tried a couple of things to eliminate dogs from the hunting community. And it was really interesting because I think what they were thinking was, you know, in the hunting community, you have some outside extenuating groups that come in, like the American Kennel Club, United Kennel Club, North American Versatility Dog. They have lobbyists. They're huge organizations. They've got money. And so very quickly, you know, the Humane Society and everybody else was trying to get their money out of the fight. And one of the things they did was they first went after the hounds that were used to hunt bears. And they tried to portray it that the bear was defenseless. Bears never experienced having to fight dogs in their life beforehand. And I'd be sitting there going, and wolves aren't part of the dog family. We just know that like everybody's dog is from a wolf, you know, if you go back far enough. So where are you even coming up with this? But they hit the public and they hit our community. And a lot of our community, I watch groups of people in the hunting community go, oh, well, that's not waterfowl, so it's not my deal. That's bear hunting. That's not, I'm a pig hunter. I'm a this hunter. And everybody fled to their own little areas because the Humane Society would say, we're not coming after you. We're just going after this small little group. And I watched everybody peel off to save their own skin.
And eventually they'll be the next small little group.
Right.
That's what they don't understand.
And they won. Hounds were taken out of bear hunting. Immediately from that moment, they spread that across to 17 states across the country. And it wasn't until it got to the state of Maine that Maine revolted and overturned the law in a referendum by the people, which thank God for our brothers and sisters in Maine, because that stopped that transgression. Now a lot of it's been overflipped, not here in California yet. But in the very next year, this is no joke. And Joel, I had to do everything in my power not to be like just explode in a room because I have an Irish temperament. So kind of like you're Italian with hands, Irishmen tend to like boil and go boom. And one of the things that happened was they were actually talking about removing Labrador retrievers, you know, Springer Spaniels, et cetera, from upland game hunting because we were causing pheasants to have like heart palpitations and stuff. And I'm like, what? And they're like, well, we've been able to monitor it. And I want to ask all these questions like...
Okay, wait. Where did you get an EKG and put it on a pheasant and monitor the heart palpitations? That is the most idiotic... Well, I started saying it's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. It's not. I've heard other ones, but it's pretty idiot. It's up there on the scale.
Right, and
wow.
that's what some of these anti-hunting groups were perpetuating. This myth, and they were talking about how, you know, pheasants, when they hear the dogs, will like go to ground. And I'm like, pheasants do that naturally because of hawks up in the air.
Right.
It's like chickens do. This is a natural bird thing to do. And they're like, no, that's from Labradors. And then they start to go on to Labradors and other upland dogs are forced to do this. They don't naturally want to do it.
A dog?
Right.
My dog Charlie has a prey instinct that is so amazing. If it blinks, if it moves in his vision or nose or anywhere he senses, he's after it.
Right.
That's part of being a dog. They're predators.
And like tell a retriever not to retrieve.
You're right.
Oh, it's part of their name.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Tell a Labrador not to go out in the water and get the duck and bring it back. I mean, right. You know, the hard part's getting the duck away from him before he chews it up into pieces. Yeah, exactly. That's the difficult part.
Hey, this is tasty. So this is, you know, and finally when that happened, they came together and the hunting community has now been pushing back and we've made some great strides. But this is what we've got to replicate throughout. We've got to get all the different groups on board fighting as one. And that is a big part of our mission right now is trying to get these people to realize, put the egos aside. I don't care if you're doing, you know, this type of competitive shooting or that type. Any attack on competitive shooting is attack on every form of competitive shooting. Any attack on hunting, any attack on CCWs, it's an attack on the entire community, and we should be coming out. We should not allow them to parse this down to, oh, well, you're this group or you're that group, because that's what they're trying to do.
Well, it sounds like they're being somewhat effective at it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Well, listen, we're running out of time, but I want to just go over these again now. What can we do? The wins are awesome. I'm glad that component parts bill, whatever they called it, was a nightmare.
Yeah,
in case you know what that was, 2382. That was they were going to start controlling various parts that you might buy to build a firearm, which were not considered a firearm. So let's use as an example an upper for an AR-15. They're going to start controlling that such that you needed a background check to buy that. You want a new trigger? you want to buy yourself a Timney trigger or something like that, you need a background check to get that. You want to buy parts for your gun because a part broke. You need an ejector for your gun. You got to get a background check. That's ridiculous, but that's what that bill was, so I'm glad that's dead. So these other ones, 221 SB 221, and then the other ones that you listed, what can we do other than show up at the Del Mar Gun Show on September 11th at 10 a.m., please, for the rally there? What else can we do to help you fight these?
Well, what you can do is call their assemblyman and their senator, even call the authors of the bill, jam up their phones, tie them up, and bring some pain. This is the time of the year. Just make it impossible for them to do anything in their offices because so many of us are calling and complain about this. Is it better to
call or show up?
Both. Right now, it's a full court press. Make their life miserable. And then as soon as, stay in tune and watch, we post it for everybody to see, then it will be calling the governor's office and telling the governor's office, we don't want these bills, or we do want these bills. And there's a lot that can be done at that point. We've been very successful in the past to getting the governor to veto some things. And that's where we're going to have to be, just a full court press to do that. Because next year, unfortunately, the way things are looking right now, Brown's replacement is actually going to be worse than Brown.
Well, I'm hoping not, but I'll be stunned if it ain't the case. I'm still going to get out and vote for Cox because anything is better than Gavin Nuisance.
Right.
That dude is a nuisance, and he's named appropriately, Gavin Nuisance. We need to make sure he doesn't get elected. But if he does, then we have an uphill battle, and that's the case as well. So I want to wrap up real quick here because I don't want to hold you any longer, and I know we kind of ran long here, and that's fine. But if there were if there was one thing that somebody could do right now, give money, make a phone call, stop by the office of their legislature, if there was only one thing they could do, what would be the most important?
I get asked that a lot, and I'm going to tell you my answer. The thing that you can actually get done. Because there's some people that are like, oh, I'm going to go to the office, and they can't go to the office, and because that's what they committed to, then they're like, well, I'm not going to do anything. If you can go to the office, go to the office. If you can't make a phone call, then give money so we can at least put that pressure there. It's always good when the person proactively goes and makes a stink at the office, but a lot of people can't do that. I understand it. They have work. They have other things. Then make a phone call. But some people don't even have the time or feel uncomfortable doing that. They maybe feel they don't. Then give money to the fight. Those are the way I usually tell people to do it.
Is there a place, and I have a lot of subscribers and viewers that look to me as the source for information.
Right.
And that's all fine and well and good, but I don't do these every day.
Right.
So where would they go to get current information on these bills on a regular basis?
They can go to CRPA.org. And they just click on the legislative tag, and that will give them the most up-to-date information on those bills.
Okay, so I'm going to put that in the link for you. I'm going to put a link in the description for you so that you don't have to go hunt for it. You can just click directly to that page at CRPA. I'll get that in today. So if you're looking for information and you want to get that off CRPA's website, you can just go to that link directly, and that will keep you up to date as to what's going on with these bills along the way.
Yep.
Wonderful. Is there anything else anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or that you wanted to talk about that we didn't?
Not for today, but I'm sure we'll come back and talk again.
Wait till, it's like the weather in Florida where my sister lives. Wait, if you don't like it, wait 5 minutes.
Okay.
There'll be something to talk about.
Yeah.
Rick, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I know this is a really tough and busy time for you, and I appreciate you making time for me today. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for watching. Please check out the CRPA website. Join if you haven't. I urge you to do so. I am a member. Actually, I think I'm a life member of CRPA now that I think about it. And you should be too. So please check out their website. The link is in the description. Please, 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 whatever you can accomplish and you can get done, take steps to do something to get yourself into the fight. Thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful week, and please be safe.